Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of A Queen's Roundtable show and podcast. This particular segment is the Born to Lead docuseries. And these are always so much fun for me, talking about leadership. We just talk openly and candidly about leadership, the ups, the downs, always ending on a note with practical tips and tools for you to be able to utilize to hone in and level up your leadership game, whether you are a corporate executive or you're a business owner or both. That is the purpose of the Born to Lead docuseries. So thank you so much for joining us again. And let me say, please, if you have not done so already, make sure that you go to either Amazon Fire TV, Roku, or Apple TV, or the iOS platform. We're in the iOS App Store, as well as the Android App Store, and we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Make sure you go and download the actual app. That way you can take a look at all of the different awesome women that I've interviewed for this Born to Lead docuseries segment. And if you are interested in being interviewed, reach out to me and let's have a conversation and let's make it happen. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to my next guest, which is Brittany. I'm gonna let her pronounce her own last name. I don't want to mess it up. So Brittany is the Chief Operating Officer of Grand Canyon Law Group, a top criminal defense firm in Arizona. With 16 plus years in legal ops, she leads from the second chair with grit, heart, and her favorite acronym, GSD, Get Shit Done. A foster care survivor turned C suite exec, Brittany builds systems that work, cultures that last, and teams that feel seen, supported, and empowered. For her, leadership is about showing up with compassion, creating clarity, and doing the hard things. So let's bring Brittany on into the studio. Hello there, Brittany. How are you?
Hi, Jackie. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yes, of course, of course. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of this docu-series. So, Brittany, I know I've given just a snippet about you, but go ahead and just kind of, start from the beginning. Who is Brittany, and how did you get to where you are today with
I appreciate
your GSD?
it's my favorite. A lot of people use that acronym with me consistently. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for this platform. I really do believe in the power of stories, especially for women and ones that don't. I know we talked about this, have like a neat and tidy beginning or a glossy title. I'll kind of give you a little bit of backstory because it is not shiny. At 6 months old, my mom left me on my grandparents' porch, didn't come back for weeks. I guess thankfully they were packing for a trip to Hawaii, and just like that, I kind of went too. So my first trip to Hawaii was at 6 months old, unexpectedly. And then really from like 3 to 13, I probably saw some, we'll call them pockets of stability, and some Christmases, fishing trips. I had a stepdad at the time, obviously mixed in with some dysfunction. And then at 12, my mom was arrested and put in jail for quite a long time. So I went into the foster care system, and I was in multiple foster homes until approximately 15 when I met my foster dad. And during that time, I had a really amazing aunt who was a big force in my life, still is to this day. And I, at that point, had this man. His name was Gary, and he has since passed. But I had him, and he really just, lack of a better word, cared when I really needed the most in these really formative years. And I like to give him credit where it is due. I don't think without him I would be where I am right now. It really forced me to just push myself and drive a little faster. And I've never really played victim in any way, shape, or form. I remember even as a small child, people saying, "Oh my gosh, like, so sorry that this is your life." And my response was always like, there are people with way worse lives. I still have food on the table. I have a home. Yes, it's dysfunctional, but I have these things. And so it really forced me to push myself to be the best that I could be. And then fast forward, and I fell into this beautiful legal career that I have now been a part of for 16 plus years. And that was just happenstance. And I've been really blessed to scale firms, start firms, and now be with Grand Canyon Law Group, which we are an exclusively criminal defense firm here in Arizona, and really give people second chances, which I think is so important. And that kind of just at least packages up my story up into where I'm at now.
Okay. So I have to ask this. So how did you end up falling? I don't remember the exact word you used,
Yeah.
falling or stumbling or what have you, into the legal field.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was working multiple jobs at the time, and I was actually one of my primary job at the time was working for a company that specialized in drug and alcohol treatment centers nationwide. And I really did think that was going to be my lifelong passion just because of my childhood. And I got an opportunity to start running operations. And if I'm being completely frank, the company I was with changed my schedule. I was 20 something years old, very young, early 20s, and was like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm just going to apply at this job. And so I fell in love with the legal field because I loved working with the attorneys. And my first firm was family law, bankruptcy, and I started there in 2008. So as you can imagine, um, it was the height of the recession, and a lot of people were losing their homes. And it was something where I just felt this calling to help people. And I also realized pretty early on that attorneys spend a ton of money. They go to law school, they're so incredibly intelligent, but a lot of them don't understand how to run a business and make their firm a business. And so it was this niche market that just spoke to me. And I have, like I said, worked in 3 firms over the past 16 years, and I've really enjoyed all of them. I'm sure I've had moments. My first one, I definitely struggle with burnout and amongst other things, but it's been just such a blessing. I get asked all the time, do you think you'll leave the legal space? And it would be really hard for me to leave the legal space. I love the people that we work with, and there's a sense of purpose in all of the fields of legal that I've worked in. So family law, crim, defense, and bankruptcy, where you're helping somebody who's at literally the worst time of their life. I mean, somebody going through a divorce or losing custody of their kids or losing their home, or even more so, losing their freedom, they need somebody to advocate for them. And they also need somebody to just show them some compassion and be human with them.
Right. Right. Well, this is so interesting to me. I mean, it just goes to show you that, sometimes we might think that we're going to take a particular path, and it just doesn't work like that. Like, so I mean, I totally get that. And then also too, a lot of times people change careers. Sometimes people,
Yeah.
are in a particular career for years. Like I had a buddy of mine who was a fellow social worker,
Okay.
and she switched over to nursing, even though some people say, I mean, I guess I can see it both ways. Some people might say, well, it's still in the helping profession, right?
Of
Um,
course.
it is in the helping profession, but it's also a lot more math and science in that profession than it is in social work too. But yeah, so people, sometimes you just never know. You just
Yeah.
never know.
And kind of talking about like these different paths. I mean, I met my husband. By the way, I'm not from Arizona. I'm originally from California. And I was just stopping in to Arizona for one night. And I've been here for a decade, met my husband here. And it was literally a pit stop. Like I was on my way to Texas. I had left a pretty toxic relationship and was just stopping for one night. And the next morning I woke up and I said, I was having coffee, talking with my other friend who I grew up with who lived out here, and said, I don't think I'm going to leave. And she was like, thank gosh you said that, because I didn't think you should go to Texas. I think that was a terrible idea. And then fast forward a few months later, I meet my husband, I buy a home here, I have dogs, and now I have this really beautiful fulfilling life with amazing friends and mentors and networks. And it just all happened on a drive when I finally kind of set a boundary for something previous and took that path.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing. So what you do is you work specifically with lawyers that, because I know you mentioned earlier that just because they can be an excellent lawyer, but doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to turn that into a practice.
Correct. Yeah. So I primarily work, well, now I'll use our current firm. So we have two owners. They are phenomenal, truthfully, some of the best people I've worked with. And they've done a really good job. I'm really at the scaling place with them. They already had it built prior to me coming here. But I've worked at firms where we didn't, we're filing the initial paperwork to become a corporation. So a lot of the times, and in our industry, they now call it a practice legal administrator, so a PLA, but it is still a chief operating officer. You're just in the legal industry. I've always really leaned towards marketing, sales, operations. Do we have a handbook? How are we dealing with human resources? I have a background in human resources, which is also kind of what led me to that. And then on top of that, what are we doing with our systems and processes to make everything so streamlined so we can, one, help our clients more effectively, also not cause burnout for our teams, keep retention, keep our staff happy. Mental health is really important to me. It's very important in all the teams that I work in. And so I'm working consistently with the executive team. So typically the owners of the law firm and if the firm is large enough, we may also have a CFO or a financial controller. But I'm really overseeing everything: factory, human resources, sales, marketing, anything that you can imagine. I'm overseeing it, and then I'm reporting that to the owners. And then that way they're able to practice law and scale their business and look at kind of that vision ahead versus focusing on the minute details of, well, is Barbara doing her job today? Like, they don't need to worry about that. They need to worry about, how do I make this firm, a $10 million firm, a $20 million firm, so I can help more people and provide more jobs.
Right, right. Help more people and provide more jobs. Okay, okay. I get that. All right. So now, where do you see yourself? And this should literally like just came to my mind. Where do you see yourself in like the next 5 years?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Where do I see myself in the next 5 years? Still in Arizona. I don't think that's changing at all. I love it here. It's the best place I've ever lived, and I really do see myself still with Grand Canyon Law Group. I just think that our work is definitely not done. We talk about, and the owners talk about, we never we want to be the best criminal defense firm. We're exclusively criminal defense, versus the biggest, because I think sometimes businesses and business owners in general are like, if I could just be the biggest, but you really lose that human side. And we want to make sure that everyone knows that they're not a number. They're somebody that we're really here to advocate for. And so where I see myself in 5 years, gosh, I would anticipate still here, probably being more of a thought leader with human resources personally. I also own my own brand, the Legal COO, potentially helping our really vast network of referral partners with things that they need for scaling their business. I mean, I really just think knowledge is key, and we can all help one another in the legal community, even though it's a large community. And I hope to be on the board of a couple nonprofits by that time, and give back to my local community. And ideally, really just empowering women if I can. I mean, that would be amazing to have some mentorship with other women and help people just see their potential. Kind of how you've been doing, is helping people realize their potential within the firm, provide growth opportunities and growth paths. That's kind of where I see myself, as just being a mentor, an advocate, a champion to other people in our community.
Absolutely. So let me ask this. I think this might be a good way to segue into talking more about leadership. So,
Love.
why did you decide to participate and be interviewed for this Born to Lead docuseries?
Well, that's a great question. So I know you and I have talked about it a little bit, but one of the things that really kind of drew me to this and had me throw my hat in the ring was that I think we are so good at really celebrating entrepreneurs and business owners. And I love that. And I will celebrate them from the rooftops. But I also think there are a lot of people that I use second chair, second in command a lot for my own title, who are really working behind the scenes to scale these really incredible companies that have purpose and passion, and they're really doing great things in their community. And we're not really celebrating that. It's like I see all the time, like, I wouldn't want to interview with this entrepreneur. And I'm like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm somebody who's an executive, and I love operations, and I love systems, and I like to turn chaos into clarity and really focus on that. But I think that I feel that there are other women similar to me who could really use some platforms that just are able to showcase all of their strengths and give some feedback to other people, because I'm learning every day. I have again a vast network of beautiful, incredible, successful women, and I am always just in awe of the things that they do. And I love to take those little knowledge nuggets and keep them and then implement them in my own day to day. And so I really wanted to bring into this. And because of that is I think that you can be a leader without being a business owner or an entrepreneur, and a very successful one at that. And also, I think it's important to bring the human side back. Again, I work in the legal industry. I think a lot of people feel like it's a little bit more rigid, probably similar to finance. And it needs to be human focused, not just for our clients. That's a huge part, but really for our teams.
Okay. Okay. I respect that, and I totally agree. So, Brittany, what area do you want to focus on, and kind of let us know, maybe if you want to share some different nuggets that
Yeah.
you've learned over the years that have contributed to you being a very successful leader?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a few nuggets. I mean, the one that I tend to lean towards most of the time is burnout, because I
Mhm.
think everybody experiences that no matter what part of the totem pole you're in, whether you're the entrepreneur, whether you're the business owner, whether you're a COO or a C-suite. Burnout is real. I think that based on my age, I think it was even more real. I feel like the younger generations are doing a lot better job of having boundaries, which is amazing. I don't feel that I did, and I burned out twice. I mean, I one of my first firms, I slept on a futon every single night for 2.5 years, just
Mm.
so I could work until midnight, wake up at 4 a.m., go to the gym in the building, and not lose any time. And I was working 65-hour plus weeks, and it just wasn't sustainable. In my mind, I thought it was sustainable. And if I'm being completely honest, I really think, like, minus the fact that I was crying in my car almost every day, I really think that I thought that that was a badge of honor. The harder I worked, the more recognition I got. And it just didn't, everything that I did, I was like, okay, if I'm just the first person in the office, the last person to leave, that will get me recognized. And that will mean that I'm doing my job. I'm not letting anybody down. And you're just really juggling all of this. And I think if I can give one piece of advice, it would be to slow down. And I know that is easier said than done. I would say that for me, slowing down, I think most people who know me would say I'm still going 100 miles per minute, but I feel like I'm a lot more at peace with my schedule. Also, just taking some time to say no, and that's okay. Like, you have a voice, you're allowed to use it. And it took me years of therapy. It took me focusing on recovery based leadership. I also now, because I'm such an advocate for not burning out, I really focus on mental health in any firm that I'm at, whether that's EAP programs, access to therapists, anything that I can do to really help other people. I think that's really important. I just don't want to glamorize burnout anymore. And I did for many, many years. So I would say the biggest nugget that I can give is to slow down. Being busy does not make you more important or more seen. Being productive does, and being efficient does. And you can do that without really killing yourself in the process.
Hmm. Now, and I'm trying to remember it. I know you used the word recovery. You said focusing on recovery. What is
Recovery-based leadership.
okay? Recovery based leadership.
Yeah.
So, what is that exactly?
For me, I think recovery-based leadership is taking the time off that you need,
Okay.
taking a mental health day, also making sure that your staff knows that. I will say I really try, maybe with my executive team, but with our staff, I do not message them after hours. I do not, unless it is a grave emergency. But I've also been that person where it's 10 p.m. and I get an email on my phone, and I think, especially during COVID, where we're all working from home, I have to respond to that. I don't
Mm,
want them to feel that way. Scheduled sends on your email, lifesaver. If you're thinking of something and you want to send it to somebody that you're working with or that you're leading, just have it send in the morning at 8 a.m. when they get there. They don't need, because if they're up, they're going to stress about it. They care about the business, they care about you, and they want to do a great job. So I think that recovery based leadership is really encouraging time off, not micromanaging, and making sure that you are also showing them that you're not always available. Because again, I think COVID made everyone available 100% of the time. And it really made people feel like their homes were no longer their homes, at least for me.
yeah.
And it just felt really stressful. So that's the way I lead. And then also advocating for mental health. I'm very open and transparent with all of my teams about my own journey, about that I go to therapy. It's on my calendar because I want them to see that, because I think it's really important.
Exactly. Okay. And so that's leading by example.
Yeah.
That's leading by example. Okay. I like that. Recovery based leadership. Did I say it right? Recovery
Yes,
based
you
leadership.
perfect. Yeah.
All right. I like that. Okay. So I'm trying to, I was trying to kind of stay away some of the basic or stay away from some of the basic, leadership questions like, well, what do you
Okay.
think a good leader is? And,
Okay.
so, so let
It's
me ask,
hard. It's also late at night where you're at, right? So I get it.
okay, so what would you say? What do you attribute your success as a leader to? So okay, and then I want to say that, and then I
Yeah.
want to ask you, what was it like? I mean, and I know you've shared about, how things were growing up for you.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the impact? Because a lot of, like I say, it's kind of split. Sometimes I interview women and they've seen it. They've, seen their mom, their grandmother, their
Hmm.
aunts in, leadership roles or running their own business, right? And then there's maybe the other half that hasn't seen that. It's a woman is to be seen and not heard, and you don't need to say everything that you think. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
I'm sure people would also like me to not say as much as I think. So
So I'm curious to know those two things, if that makes sense.
yeah. So can you repeat the first question one more time just so I can
You would ask that, no?
sorry. Well, you said what do you attribute
Right, right. There you go.
yeah.
Right. Your success as a leader too. Thank you.
Uh, yeah, so I I mean, I think I would attribute it to a few items, but um probably one, I think it's kind of a both of what you stated. So I did have my aunt who really is a powerhouse. She's always been in male dominated industries. She's super
Mm,
successful and strong-willed and beautiful inside and out, so generous, and I love that. I also like to look at my mom, because my mom is an amazing person. She just struggles with addiction. And so for me, I think being my success as a leader was probably in, if I'm being completely honest with myself, was probably in the fact that I needed to make sure that I had a sense of control in my life. And so I looked at my mom and I said, okay, well, I have to do everything opposite of what she did because that's how I have to get to the next level. And I would, I mean, I think that I like to say, tell my husband this, and I think he agrees. I got the best parts of my mom, truthfully, like would give you the shirt off of her back, very resilient in most ways. She just struggles. And so I think for me, I attribute my leadership really to looking at her and then also having this complete polar opposite in my aunt and saying, what do I need to do to get to the next level? But then more importantly, how to be just like, again, going back to my mom, she's really kind. And I think that I've put that a lot into my leadership. And I think the success of my leadership is probably those two. And then we're going to go back to my acronym because GSD lives by it. I get shit done. Like I will grind if I need to. And even in a higher executive position now, if work has to be done, I'll be the first one to make sure that it gets done. There's no job or role or anything that I have an ego over. Like I'm happy to do whatever needs to be done to help. And that includes with our team because there are people, at least for me, that I see, and if they're struggling, how can I help them, right? So I would say really GSD and polar opposites, the good, the bad, and the ugly of family would probably be what really catapulted me into the success of my leadership now.
Okay. Awesome. Wow. And you know what? And that's something that is also a huge component of talking about this,
Yeah.
because I've run across some individuals that don't really look at leadership as something that can be cultivated. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think that there are certain individuals that they're just born with that, that
That's,
spirit in them, right? And then there's others that may not, but they're able to cultivate it.
yeah.
So part of this, doing this docu-series, is I wanted to be able to talk about that. Those individuals that may not, don't feel like they were born with that, you know, it wasn't in it. They don't feel like they were born with it. They feel like they cultivated it through, through growth, through
Yeah.
personal development, through what everybody thinks of professional development, right? But a
Of
lot of people
course.
really talk about personal development, and becoming clear on who you are, right? And like standing
Hmm.
in your truth, being your true authentic self, and through learning yourself. And it's, I think it's just like anything else, just like maybe, I don't know, learning to be a computer programmer. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? I think that it's definitely, well, being a woman, I know some people may
Yeah.
not like this. I definitely think that it is more innate to us in
I
terms
would
of
agree.
being leaders,
Yeah.
right? And I think a huge part of that is our emotional capacity, our ability to effectively communicate, and to actually get to know an individual. Because in order to be an effective leader, in order to lead a team effectively, you have to know how to support and how to build that team up. And you can't do that if you don't know the individual, if you don't, you know what I mean, if
Yeah.
you're not able to connect and be your authentic self, to promote, kind of leading by example, right? And actually, by being your authentic self, helps to promote your team to be their authentic selves, right? And then creating that environment of, we're all human, you know.
Hmm.
Um, some days we hit the mark, some days we don't. We're all in this together. Yes, there are uncertainties. I don't know everything, but what I do
Yeah.
know is that whatever comes, I'm in the trenches with you, and we're going to face it together. And when you have that sort of a foundation, that allows your team members to feel comfortable,
Yeah.
to let you in and to express what they're looking for and what's important to them. When you find out what's important to a person, you can help them basically become a better or grow into being a better version of themselves.
Well, and kind of like you were just saying, I agree with you 100%. And also that when we talked, well, even earlier in the interview, probably,
Mhm.
is I talk about the human side because I think that there are corporations and even small businesses where some people are truly there just to work and get a check. And that's totally fine because the beauty is you really need those people in order to, we talk about like the worker bees and a queen bee, like there's a process to that. But we also have this really beautiful, I like to call it kind of like this in between where you get to know somebody personally, and ask them how they're doing. Like, hey, how are you? Remember somebody if they say they had a doctor's appointment. How'd it go? How's your mom doing? How was your Easter? I mean, these are simple questions, and kindness is free. I've said that my whole life. Kindness is just free. So just do it. As much as you can be kind to people and remember their name or remember, it matters. It matters to your team. It matters to your clients. It matters to your network of people. It matters if you are on the street and you see somebody with a beautiful outfit or they look great, tell them. They want to hear it. Like that is such a powerful moment when you can give that good to somebody else. And so coming into like the human side of it, I believe that leadership has to be human. I think we're past the stage of just leading teams in like this project management format. It's how do we lead teams who their buy-in is your buy-in? How do you guys work together? And I agree. I just think again, I think the human side is so important. And how do you motivate somebody? I mean, I hope that when my time on this earth comes to an end, there's a Tim McGraw song, so dumb, I know, but it's called Standing Room Only. So, but I hope that that is the case because I touched people because I cared. Like there's a compassion side and a human side that I think sometimes in management and leadership we lack because we are at this high stress of we have to make numbers and there's a machine and how do we get this done, but it's so important. And those people, whether they stay with your company for now or later, they're going to remember you by that. And they will always remember that you cared over anything else. So I agree. I love people. So I want to make people feel seen and heard and supported and empowered to make decisions and feel that they are a part of the growth for them personally and for their company that they're working with.
Yeah. You know how you said you love people. Do you think that's well, maybe not requirement, but um well, let's say requirement. Do you think that that's
Okay.
a requirement for a effective leader to a certain extent like people or be a people person?
Well, I mean, biasly, I'll say yes because I really love people. But no, I actually think there are some really incredible introverted leaders that we probably don't give enough credit to, who put the right people in the seats to make sure that their team still feels that way.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to be that person, but you can see and I have a need for this team, and I really need to make sure that they are taken care of and they feel supported. So let me get a beautiful human resources person in here who has this, heart of gold and wants to be an advocate for them to me. And then that way I can still lead, I can still run the business, but they are feeling those feelings that they need to feel when they're being supported. And that's just, I don't necessarily think that you have to have that trait. I feel like that would just not be true if I said that. Mhm.
Yeah. You know what? And I like how you answered that. And because part of being a good leader, right, is knowing yourself and
Yeah.
knowing what your strengths are. Oh my God, my
And
face. Knowing what your strengths are and knowing maybe if I don't know, some people are like, I don't like the word weakness, but knowing the areas that you need to improve on that you can
yeah,
stand to improve on, right? Because everybody's not everything.
no,
Just like being a business owner as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be great at everything.
no.
You're just not. And that's part of that process in building your team, right?
Yep.
Is to figure out like this person here. Some people like to be behind the scenes. They like to just know how everything works. That's just how their brain works. And then
Yeah.
there's people like you just mentioned, they like to be out in the front. Hey, how you doing? Come on in, have a seat. How was your weekend? You know what I mean? So, and that's part of being a good leader,
Yeah.
is actually knowing yourself and knowing what areas you may need some work in. So like you said, and as a leader, and you understand that it is important to for people to feel like they're a part of something. People want to feel like they matter, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And if you don't have that particular capacity, like you said, that's fine. But knowing that that's an important component, you put a person in place that is.
Yeah.
Just like some people aren't real good with the details. Some people just not
Correct.
good, they're visionaries, right?
Beautiful
Really
visionaries.
good with the details. So what do? You put someone in place that's good with the details. That person's gonna say, "Hey, wait a minute. Remember, blah 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 blah." You need that. You need that person.
Well, and I think that kind of goes into that same, and I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are really first starting out,
Mhm.
it's, when you first start out, I feel like you're like, I have to be all these people because I haven't built this brand. I'm starting from scratch and I really have to be all these people. And that puts a lot of pressure on individuals. And realistically, it's so much better to have a network of people where you can get insights, even if you're starting out and you're, solo in the beginning. Get some insights, understand, there's a lot of things that you can outsource that you don't necessarily need to hire an employee because that is a process in itself. But really just saying, we use our term in the firm, or what I've used a lot, is just putting people in the right seat on the right bus, right? Like that's it. We just want people to be in the right seat because one, they're going to feel really good in that seat. And two, that allows you to really focus on your areas of improvement, or also your really big strengths, which is a lot of the times the visionary. I mean, typically owners of businesses and entrepreneurs are visionaries. They're super creative. I'm jealous of that. I am not that person. I am a logistical person for sure. I love analytics. I love numbers. I love spreadsheets. Like that's just how my brain works. And I love the behind the scenes. You had mentioned it early. Like I like to know how every part of the business works. And that's a seat that I feel really confident in, but not everybody does. I mean, you could put somebody in my seat and they'd be like, this
And they'll
job
be like,
is
they'll be
terrible.
asleep. Look, I don't want to see no damn spreadsheet. Don't show me.
Yeah, they're like, I have no interest in this.
Right.
But then if you put me in a room where we were having to think of, okay, this is a new business idea, I could probably do it. I wouldn't feel comfortable in that room, though. It wouldn't be like my area that I feel the most passionate about. And so I think, again, I mean, I love teams. I think teams, and that doesn't necessarily just have to be business. That is your girlfriends, your family, your friends, like teams of people, nonprofit organizations you work with. I mean, that we get so much more done when we're unified than just solo. So I just think it's incredible.
I think one of the things that I've realized about myself, maybe within the last, I don't know, maybe I'm so bad with time, maybe 10 years, is that, and watch, there's going to be one person out there that's going to watch this on YouTube and they're going to comment, you know what I mean? Somebody that
Yeah.
knows
Oh
me
yeah.
for years, and they're going to be like, now, Jackie, But anyway, I think that I'm really good with making people feel comfortable,
I would
uh,
agree.
asking the right questions to asking the right questions to give more clarity to a particular
Okay.
situation. Like I was that kid in class. I remember being in college, and I swear to God, I would ask so many questions that the instructor would literally just look at me, like if like when they would do something or whatever, and they would just look at me like they just knew that I was going to have a question. And if I, you know what I mean, or either they would even
Yeah.
say, "Do you have any questions?" And then everybody else in the class, they were like, Jackie. I mean, it came to a time where like if they just wanted to get out of there, they would be like,
No more questions.
right, no more questions. But everyone came to me. They might have wanted to get out of class, but then next thing you know, they were calling me, saying, hey, I got to ask you a question about blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I know that that's one of my areas.
Well, you're very inquisitive, right?
Right.
Like you
Very
want to
quickly.
know, and I see that 100%. And I think questions are incredible. You should ask questions. I love it when somebody asks questions, but I also have probably been that person in class where I'm like, I just don't want to be here. Why are we still here?
Right.
So
You wouldn't have liked me.
I would have, because again, there's this being inquisitive and asking almost like these curiosity questions. Because I don't know if you're somebody like I'm a very big believer when we do training guides, put the context of why we're training on this, because there are a lot of people who need the why. They need to understand it so they can retain that information. And and it sounds like you're very similar. Like, I want to ask the question because I want to understand why we're talking about this.
Yes. If you tell me you're like, I started on a new job and you're like, oh, we just do it like that. Oh, we just, I'm like, well,
That's
why?
not helpful.
Like, I don't know. We just do it like that. Like, I'm not going to remember that. I'm just tell you right now, it's going to take me a lot longer to remember that versus you
Mm-hmm.
actually explaining why we're doing it that way.
100%. Yes.
You
And we're
know,
all different learners, right? And now we have a very large population who are neurodivergent learners as well. So we really need to kind of take that into consideration also. I'm similar. I do like to know the why. I don't necessarily need to ask, but I like to know the why. I think it's important because that gets, again, your buy-in. You become emotionally connected to something when you know the why.
yep, absolutely. So you know what, Brittany, I know we can go on because this has been a wonderful time talking with you. I've gotten so much out of this. So
Me
well,
as
we are
well.
going to be wrapping up soon. So let me ask you, what do you want to leave the audience with in
Oh,
terms
that's a
of leadership?
Yeah. Well, let me think. I think I probably have two. Well, okay. So I think the number one item that I would say would be, first and foremost, I do not have all the answers. I hope no listener thinks that I do, because I definitely do not. But I've really lived through like chaos, grinding, the pressure to be everything to everyone. I'm sure most women listening have been and felt that way. And I think the two top things that I would give is forgiveness, forgiveness to yourself, forgiveness to people who were maybe supposed to protect you or advocate for you and they didn't. And then the other thing for anybody watching and listening would be that you don't have to lead like anyone else. You don't have to prove anything. You lead the way that you want to lead. The power, in my opinion, isn't really in like following this exact structure. It's just being true and authentic as yourself as a leader. And I think that most people will really love that authenticity and they will follow if you're leading like that and with compassion and heart.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. Thank you so much.
Thank
Oh,
you.
so let the audience know where they can find you.
Oh,
Um,
perfect. Well, you can find me a lot of places. You could just Google my name. And I did not pronounce my name at the beginning. It is Brittany Truszkowski. It's Polish. We can thank my husband later for that. But LinkedIn is a great network to find me on. It's probably the easiest. If you Google my name, I'm pretty much the only Brittany Truszkowski in the world, it seems like. So you can find me there. But if you do know anyone, I would say in Arizona that is needing an attorney, even not criminal related, we have a really extensive group of referral partners. So just reach out to Grand Canyon Law Group, and I will be happy to connect you with somebody that might be able to help you through that process.
hey, now here I go with one of my questions. So I'm
Okay.
noticing behind your name, you have some
Yeah,
initials, and it
I
looks like
do.
something is trademarked.
Yeah, so that's a certified plan sponsor. It's through Vanguard. It's retirement benefits plan. So I handle benefits, and then obviously SHRM SCP is Senior Certified Professional for Human Resources.
Okay. Okay. All right.
It's
Thank you
my
so
it's my
much.
acronym title. They didn't let me put GSD on there. It's really upsetting, but Thank you, Jackie,
No
so
problem.
much for
It's so much
having this
fun.
beautiful platform. I really appreciate it. And as I stated, I will get the word out. I have a really amazing network of women, and I can't wait to get them connected with you and hopefully see them on your show.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be so awesome. So much appreciated. Yeah, so this has been great. Hopefully we can stay connected and maybe do something else
Please.
later on down the line.
I would love that. Yeah, most definitely. Thank you again. This is a great first podcast experience for me. So I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. So thanks everyone. This concludes this episode of the Born to Lead docuseries. If you're interested in being interviewed and want to have a candid conversation about leadership, then definitely reach out to me. I pretty much hang out on LinkedIn and Facebook under my name, Dr. Jacqueline Kabay Harrison. So just reach out and let's have a conversation and let's make it happen. And thanks again, everyone. Make sure you check out some of the other awesome episodes of the some of the women that I've interviewed also for the Born to Lead docuseries. Check out those as well. All right, so take care, everyone, and until next time. Bye bye now.